From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Wednesday, May 14, 2025. An expert posted pictures of death cap mushrooms in the Victorian bush, and the Crown alleges Erin Patterson drove to the location a day later. Mycologist Tom May told Patterson's murder trial the death cap doesn't grow in China. Despite the jury earlier hearing, Patterson claimed to have bought the mushrooms at a Chinese grocer. Patterson has pleaded not guilty, and we're covering her trial live at theaustralian.com.au. The Liberal Party's first female leader, Susan Lee, says she'll rebuild the coalition, end factional allegiances and convince women to vote for them. Australia's most vulnerable people need the $50 billion National Disability Insurance Scheme to make daily life possible. But whistleblowers say the government doesn't want to know about alleged rorts. Today, how crime journo David Murray used his shoeleather journalism skills to report a ripping NDIS scandal. David Murray is The Australian's national crime correspondent. Dave's been covering this round for decades now, and one of the advantages of being around for a while is that sometimes familiar names pop up. Back in 2015, Dave was a keen young journo at Brisbane's Courier Mail, where he did a story about a man named Zafar Khan. Khan was being sued by husband and wife doctors from the smaller city of Toowoomba, Ellis and Margaret Gibson. They'd invested money in a business Khan had created, a dial-a-doctor scheme, where you could have a GP come to your home for free, thanks to a federal government rebate.
It had all turned sour. This couple said that they had put in more than $1 million into this business and alleged in a Supreme Court case that Zafar had siphoned the money out and that basically the scheme was fraudulent by design. Now, this was a couple, they weren't very well. They'd been through some pretty tough times medically, and this business that had been set up in Toowoomba basically opened for a single day from memory. They saw something like 3 patients, and then suddenly the whole thing closed down and they ended up having to take him to court. That settled out of court confidentially, so we never actually got to find out what happened with that case.
No wrongdoing was proven in that matter. Now Dave's here at The Australian, and earlier this year he started hearing the same name, Zafar Khan.
I got a message out of the blue from someone saying, look, you wrote this story almost 10 years ago now. You might want to know that this man's popped his head up again. You might be interested in having a chat about some of the things that have been going on with this business. And that's where it started for me.
Zafar Khan has started a new business, Cocoon SDA Care, and it had a parent company called Horizon.
Essentially, they weren't paying the staff. The staff had gone around 6 weeks without getting their wages. It went back a lot further than that staff hadn't been paid their superannuation. They were checking their accounts to see what, I guess, they'd accumulated, only to find that the business was behind in its payments.
The Australian's reporter Kyle Rode questioned Zafar Khan about the alleged underpayments when Dave's story broke last week.
Do you have anything to say to your staff who haven't been paid?
I think as soon as NDI will pay, we will pay them immediately, yes.
Panic started settling in and the story started unravelling from there, which was what we now know is that in March, the National Disability Insurance Agency stopped automatically paying for the services that this business was claiming. And that caused, obviously, a complete meltdown for this business. And we now know that an investigation had been launched into this company back in October last year by the NDIA. They did their groundwork. They passed on information to another team inside that agency. They decided they needed to, rather than just automatically pay this firm, they needed to run a fine-tooth comb over all their claims. There were suspicions of fraud. There were all sorts of other allegations and concerns raised about this business. And that's only one aspect of this story. This case is now in the federal court. The company says we need our money to continue operating. They want to stop the NDIA from doing what's called a manual audit of claims, going through everything, every single claim. You can imagine how long that takes. This is a company that has taken in more than $100 million in NDIS funding in the past 2 years.
The company's clients are some of Australia's most vulnerable people, and they're in every state and territory.
If you look at their PR material, they say they've got a workforce of 2,400. So it became apparent this was going to be a pretty big deal. If you've got a very big organisation that can't pay its staff, then it was immediately apparent that's going to affect the care that's going to be offered to these vulnerable Australians who are relying on this company. One of the ways its tires have been inflated really is inadvertently by coverage in the Australian Financial Review. They have something called the Fast 100, and this firm made that list last year at number 14 on that list. It was flagged as one of the fastest growing firms in the country. They celebrated this achievement. This firm used it in their promotional material. And then in April this year, while they were in the middle of this massive audit that was secretly going on in the background, an investigation that was tearing apart all their books and looking at them, they were attending an awards night for one of the best places to work in Australia. And that was, again, an AFR event. They've got themselves a ticket. They didn't win, but they certainly used that event to promote themselves at the very time that they're being investigated.
As recently as March 2025, Zafar Khan was speaking about his business experience on a video podcast published by Alexander Spencer accounting firm.
To me, I think driving taxi, washing dishes, cleaning, we should not be shamed of. We should be shamed of if we are being dishonest, we cheat others, we should be shamed of.
Khan told the Australian's Kyle Road his company hasn't done anything wrong.
We are 100% honest, 100% honest. No way in the world, To me, we don't want to feed our children on wrong money. No way in the world.
Are NDIS participants who rely on your business safe?
Yes, we are trying our best to pass on to approved providers.
Yes.
And we make sure their transition is good. We have given instructions
Yes.
that no care, they are looked after well.
The context of this, Dave, is that the National Disability Insurance Scheme brought in by the previous Labor government was intended to provide some certainty for the most disabled people who have very high expenses for day-to-day life. The cost of the NDIS is blowing out enormously, on one hand because there's a range of disabilities which it's treating and controversies about whether people with autism, for example, should be included, and then on the other hand, waste and rorts. Of course, nothing has been proven yet about Cocoon, but just talking generally about the NDIS, is it a surprise to you that kind of pot of money has attracted people with an entrepreneurial spirit?
No, I don't think that would be a surprise to anyone. It is a huge amount of money. It's a massive program. It's there for a good reason, to help the people who need it most, but it's also attracting your unscrupulous elements who are going to try to make a quick buck. They're going to try to grow big very fast, get in on the ground floor. Look, that's one thing that's becoming apparent to me in covering this story, is that what we're looking at here is a firm that has grown very big very quickly. And when that happens, you get corners cut. Your services can be compromised, safety can be compromised. And this is what happened with the founder or co-founder of this company, Zafar Khan, many years ago in New Zealand. He had a taxi training business, and it grew, it expanded, and it went bust, and he went bankrupt. Now here he is showing up on this program with enormous amounts of government funding and trying to grow big very fast. Some of the information that I've been finding is that Zafar and his co-founder, Mohammed Latif, were involved in a company that failed audits, NDIS audits, back in 2021, so 4 years ago. Yet they've still been able to continue operating in this space. We now know that there's been 32 tip-offs to federal authorities over the last 4 or so years. And I'm getting told, yes, we are seeing a crackdown on the unscrupulous operators, on fraud. That has been happening. It has been having an impact, but it's a game of catch-up. There's so much money there. There's so many operators. It is so loose. The thing that stands out to me about the operations of this company is that it has been able to be so loose in its operations despite the sensitive nature of what it's doing.
Some of their clients are so vulnerable, like the case that you've reported of 3 women with complex disabilities who went out for a regular visit to a hydrotherapy pool in late 2023 and came back to find the gates to their house were padlocked. How could that possibly have happened?
It was quite remarkable, and I was getting tips about this for a little while and trying to confirm it, and going to various sources and asking what they knew about it. And eventually I spoke to a number of people. Among those was a woman who was a carer for these 3 women. They had really complex care needs. One of them had multiple sclerosis. One of them had an acquired brain injury. 2 of them were unable to walk without assistance. They required a lot of care. They go out to their regular hydrotherapy session in the morning. 2 hours later, they come back and they no longer have a home. The padlocks have been put on the gates. They're barred because the owner of the house has been forced into really this terrible position of having to force them out of the property because they haven't been getting paid rent by Cocoon SDA Care, this company that's now under investigation. This is all happening back in 2023. These 3 women had to go into emergency accommodation while this was sorted out. I'm told this rental dispute had been going on for quite some time. That had been a number of years since the rent had been paid on this property. And the owners, I'm told by the carer, lovely people, they did their best, they were so apologetic, but they simply couldn't continue on anymore. And this is the thing. This business has been promoting itself as having 2,400 employees, but when you look at the books, there's less than half that number. It says it's got hundreds of homes, but then you take a closer look, and these homes, we're talking about some homes being built by investors who've been promised very big returns, only to see those returns not materialise. They've been devastated by their dealings with this particular firm, with Zafar Khan, the co-founder, who by all accounts is the person pulling the strings, even though he's not the person on the paperwork of the company.
Has your business been claiming for services it didn't provide?
Never. Not even 1%, not even 1 cent, not even $1. No one can prove it. We are a very transparent company, honest company, credible company.
Yes.
And even we don't mind even... We can...
Coming up, a former executive blows the whistle on Cocoon SDA. One of the people who's come forward to speak to you is Tanya Quinn, who was briefly chief executive of Cocoon SDA Care. What's she telling you about her attempts to blow the whistle?
This is just one of those incredible stories that just seem to come out of nowhere. She worked for this firm as their chief executive for a matter of days, max a week, before she realised, she says, how dire things were within this company, how problematic their operations were. She started asking questions, and within that week, she was gone. Her access was cut and she was out of the firm so soon after she'd been announced as being the one who's going to be leading it. And she has provided evidence that she went to the then NDIS Minister Bill Shorten about that at the time.
We've used a voice actor to bring you the words spoken by whistleblower Tanya Quinn.
I downloaded everything I could. I went directly to Bill Shorten, went to ASIC, went to Quality and Safeguards, ATO, just gave them all the information I had, and then nothing happened. When I followed up, I had a meeting with the NDIS and they took the details and said, we'll call you, we'll get you back in to sign your statement. And then they never ever did, and I'm still waiting. I saw something online where the NDIS was talking about protections for whistleblowers. I sort of responded to him. I said, you're misrepresenting the situation. I came forward with what I think is like a massive scandal, and I think I've got evidence. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, and you've offered me nothing, no protection.
And now she's watching all of this unfold in the stories that we've been covering, in the investigations that are now ongoing, and she's saying, I told you this a couple of years ago.
David Murray is the Australian's national crime correspondent. You can follow Dave's reporting anytime at theaustralian.com.au.